All right, I've been doing some research on Atlantis, and you know, it's pretty hard to research. There's not a whole lot about it, but I did notice on the web the other day they were talking about this particular anomaly that's in the desert over in Africa, and it's 25 miles wide, and it has all of the same structural components, architecture of Atlantis, as far as I can determine. And I looked in this pretty close, and it has a lot of similarities. Let me put it that way. Now, the other thing is that it's always been a problem with the Pillars of Hercules, and the Pillars of Hercules are way up in this area, and I'll show you this from a different perspective in a minute. But what I want you to look at here is this structure here. You see this? This sort of bowl-looking thing, and you see the way this is running off, almost like it filled up and it drained over the edge here. You know what I'm saying? Now, think of this now. If at some point this, and Plato says it wasn't an earth, it wasn't a volcano, it was a collapse. It just collapsed into the ground, and then I've read that the reason that it collapsed is said that they were mining underneath for crystals. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. All of these things are very, very up in the air. But look at the thing here. Now, what would cause that kind of an anomaly? It's down deep in the ground. It has the structure of that. And I say the Pillars of Hercules were right here, because I'm going to show you a different perspective, but think of what would create this gouge in the earth. It either collapsed in here, and then I think there's two pins in the front that are directing the flow around it. I mean, that's all I can tell you. And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Pillars of Hercules of Gibraltar. Nobody ever, there's no proof of that. And there's no proof of this either, but I'm just looking and I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and and this was a sticking point, was the Pillars of Hercules. Now, let's look at it from a different perspective. Hold on a second. All right, this is down in the bowl, and this is that structure. Now, consider this. You see these little, I mean, look at the little lump. You see the shadows here of those little lumps, lump. That's, I wouldn't suspect you're going to see that, although I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating. I'm totally wrong. But it does, this is like 25 miles across. Now, Plato says that the first set of rings was like 9,000 kilometers from the outside to the inside. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how he measured it, but 9,000 here, 9,000 here, that's 18,000 kilometers. Let's say that's 15,000 miles, somewhere around in there. I mean, 15 miles. Right, yeah, so, but anyway, between this and the two outer rings, it makes up, you know, these are small. The inside ones were very, very narrow. The outside one, I guess, was quite a big breakwater. But anyway, it has that structure. Could be totally wrong, but it looks pretty interesting to me. Now, all right, now this is the interesting perspective. Think of it this way. Now, going this way is Ethiopia to the west. Okay, going this way is towards America to the east. Now, you see this cut right here? I don't know what that could be, but could it be the Pillars of Hercules? I have no clue. But let's think about it this way. Look at the interesting architecture of this. It's like a bowl here. It's like a bowl. And everything appears to be running over the outside of that bowl down in here. Now, what they say, and it's like 5,000 years ago, this whole area was an ocean. That's, I mean, there's an article about that I'm going to show you in a minute. This whole area was an ocean. And they found whales, bones, and all kinds of stuff. Now, look at the depth of this thing. This is sunk. I think this damn thing collapsed and let all the water run out. And that's what happened to the ocean that was here. That's why it became so quickly a desert. That's all I could say. It sure looks like somebody cracked the thing open. And that's what he says. It was a an earthquake, which the whole thing fell, is what they say. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I don't know. Now, Pillars of Hercules, I don't know about that. But I'm seeing something here, why would this divert this stuff around this and leave this thing in the center there uncovered? That's very interesting. But it looks to me like everything ran out of here. That's my take on it. And I'm saying that's Atlantis. And then I'll show you whatever else I can come up with. Hold on a second. All right, a moment ago, I had the wrong directions. That heads towards America. This heads towards Ethiopia. So this would obviously be heading towards the east. And that would be heading towards the west. And I think I said it the opposite. So anyway, that's that. Now, here's the other part of this. The Sahara went into a desert in a flash. They say it went from green to a desert in a flash. Well, that's because it drained. That's my saying. It didn't just dry up, like get dry all of a sudden. No. They're saying it was the most sudden geographic transformation, 5,000 years ago, one of the planet's most dramatic climate shifts. And that's because it drained. That's my feeling. And that's because Atlantis fell in, exactly what Plato says, and they say it fell in because they were mining under it, not just because it was like an earthquake. Obviously it was an earthquake, but it crashed deep into the ground, it sounds like, and the water just ran out. That's my take. Now, I'm looking at Plato for what I'm assuming is possibly reality. I mean, you know, I know a lot of people think it's just silly, but I have evidence of the giants, and I have DNA evidence, and all that business is absolutely certain. And these guys talk about these things, and I believe that these early texts were quite accurate. So I'm taking it from that standpoint. And when he comes back here, he talks about Atlantis being where the gods were. So he says, I have before remarked about the allotments of the gods. They distributed the whole earth into portions differing in extent and made themselves temples and sacrifices. So it was like they had a crew of guys, and they came down. They said, okay, you get this spot, you get this spot, you get this spot. Set it up, make sure these guys worship you, and get it under control and make the ground fertile. Now, and that was fine, apparently, except these guys turned bad. Anyway, they distributed it all, and they said, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's Poseidon receiving his island of Atlantis. So Poseidon owned Atlantis, it says. And he had children with a mortal woman, and he settled them in the part of the island as described in it all. And it's very, very detailed. And you should read it. Well, you should read it if you want. But anyway, on the side towards the sea and in the center of the island, there was a plain. And he goes on and on. He talks about it was very fertile, and they had everything they ever wanted, and the distances of all the different structures and rings and waterways. And, you know, very, very detailed. Anyway, I'm saying that if you read this, it will also bring into the account that the Ethiopians, and this is in the Ethiopian texts, they speak of the new people coming in from the west, exactly where Atlantis would be, in my estimation. And the whole area was filled with mud. And they came to them fully articulated in all of the different civilization components. They had art and literature and building and geometry and mathematics and, you know, astronomy, everything they needed. Now, what happened was they went into Ethiopia as settlers, as refugees, and the Ethiopians took them in and helped them. That's what the texts say. They took them in and they helped them, they worked with them, and then they set them up in Egypt as the Pharaohs. Now, this solves a lot of the issues for me, because I never could understand, how did these guys just pop up in Egypt being so sophisticated and saying I'm God and all this business and making all these big structures? It just makes sense. Well, if you take it from the standpoint that these were the Atlanteans, The Ethiopians helped them. The Ethiopians set them up in Egypt as the rulers of Egypt and as the new, and they were obviously gods. I mean, the people living there would say, yikes. And they would treat them as gods. They were very, very sophisticated. And then it became a literal unit, Ethiopia and Egypt. They became one under peaceful conditions. And I think it went on for a very long time. They were a literal unit, Ethiopia and Egypt, trading and culture and everything. And then I'm not sure what happened after that. This, things broke apart, wars, yada yada yada. Anyway, what can I say? At that point, it becomes muddled, and then history sort of changes around a little bit. But up until that point, it seems to support that these people came in from the west, out of the mud, welcomed and helped by Ethiopia in the highlands of Eastern Africa, and then they supported them in their relocation and eventual, domination of Egypt. And that's the way I see it.